A lone, human warship drifts through the wreckage of its own star system, silent testimony to a price so steep that no alien would ever dare strike Earth again. The images haunted Commander Elena Reyes every night. 2 billion lives snuffed out in 48 hours. The Zephyrian bombardment had come without warning. No declaration of war. No diplomatic channel. Just silent death raining from orbit. 3 years had passed, but the nightmares remained vivid. "Commander, we're approaching lunar orbit." Lieutenant Noah. Kim's calm voice pulled her from the darkness of memory. Through the view screen of the USS Vigilance, Earth's scarred surface rotated slowly. Recovery efforts visible even from space. The dome shields over rebuilt metropolises glinting in the sunlight. Orbital defense platforms like mechanical sentinels standing watch. "Very good, Lieutenant. Alert Admiral Jane will be docking at Lunar Base Gamma within the hour." Elena moved to the captain's observation deck, gazing at her homeworld. New York, where her parents and brother had lived, was now a glittering crater. The memorial lights marking its boundaries, visible even from here. Mumbai, Lagos, Shanghai, 43 major population centers reduced to glass and ash in the first wave. Her fingers unconsciously traced the small, holographic pendant at her neck, cycling through images of her family. They had never found her parents' bodies. "Commander?" Dr. Lin Kao appeared at her side, datapad in hand. Once Earth's leading xenobiologist and advocate for peaceful first contact, the scientist now headed the military's reverse engineering division. "Tell me it's working," Elena said. Chow nodded, expression somber. "The Zephyrian cloaking matrix is fully operational. We've adapted it to mask both thermal and electromagnetic signatures. The Vigilance is now the most undetectable ship in the fleet." "Good. The Admiral will be pleased." Elena's voice remained flat, professional, though inside a flicker of grim satisfaction bloomed. 3 years ago, she had been a UN peace envoy, dedicated to preventing interspecies conflict. Now, she commanded humanity's most advanced warship, its purpose singular: retribution. The Human Retribution Corps wasn't officially a vengeance force, publicly. It served as Earth's defensive deterrent. But everyone from the cadets in training to the politicians in the governing council knew its true purpose. When Admiral Marcus Jane had drafted her to command the Vigilance, his words had been crystal clear. "They struck first, Commander. Our job is to ensure they never strike again." "I have other findings as well," Kao said hesitantly. She lowered her voice, though they were alone. "The transmission we intercepted from deep Zephyrian space, I've decoded portions of it. There are references to something called Second Strike Protocol." Elena's blood ran cold. "You're certain?" "The encryption was complex. But yes. Whatever they're planning, it's unprecedented in scale. Based on the energy signatures and resource allocations mentioned, they're mobilizing something massive." Elena's hand tightened on the railing. "We need to inform the Admiral immediately." As the Vigilance docked at Lunar Base Gamma, Elena's mind raced with implications. After the devastating first attack, Earth had barely begun to recover. The dome cities housed survivors. The orbital platforms deterred conventional assault. But if the Zephyrians launched another strike with something even more devastating than their first attack, the Admiral was waiting in the secure briefing chamber, his weathered face grim. Originally from Mumbai, Marcus Jane had lost his entire family, his home, and his former life in the initial bombardment. The man who once commanded peacekeeping forces now oversaw humanity's most lethal armada. "Commander Reyes, Dr. Kao, what have you found?" His voice betrayed no emotion, but Elena recognized the tension in his stance. Dr. Kao uploaded her findings to the holographic display. "High-energy transmissions, Admiral. We've intercepted and decoded references to what they're calling a second strike protocol. Analysis suggests they're consolidating resources around something called Aegis Bastion in the Kepler 438 system." Jane studied the data, his expression hardening. And your assessment, Doctor? Based on energy requirements and material transports, they're building something massive, potentially worse than what they used against Earth. Silence fell over the chamber. Eventually, Jane spoke, each word measured. 3 years ago, they struck without warning. 2 billion dead. We cannot, will not, allow that to happen again. He turned to Elena. Commander Reyes, prepare the vigilance. You'll rendezvous with the USS Retribution and the rest of the fleet. We're taking the fight to them. Elena nodded, but hesitation flickered across her face. Sir, shouldn't we gather more intelligence? If we could determine exactly what... There is no time for diplomacy. Commander, Jane's voice cut like steel. That was your previous life. The Zephyrians have made their intentions clear. Twice now, they've chosen annihilation over coexistence. With respect, Admiral, we don't know for certain what they're... 2 billion dead. Commander, would you risk 2 billion more while we debate semantics? His eyes bored into hers. The Governing Council is split on how to proceed. The Strike Now Coalition has authorized me to prepare a preemptive response. I'm entrusting this mission to you because despite your diplomatic background, I believe you understand what's at stake. Elena's jaw tightened. She did understand. The memories of flames engulfing New York's skyline. The desperate transmissions cut silent as Mumbai's defenses failed. They were seared into her consciousness. Very well, Admiral. When do we depart? Jane's message arrived hours later, as Elena prepared her crew. Prepare your people to take the fight to their doorstep. We cannot let them ever raise their weapons against Earth again. The words echoed in her mind as she toured the ship, meeting with key officers. Lieutenant Noah Kim, her tactical officer, once a galactic marathon champion, now one of the fleet's most precise weapons specialists. Lieutenant Commander Zara Patel, Chief Engineer, formerly head of Mumbai's renewable energy research. Her family among the first casualties of the attack. Dr. Marco Ruiz, Medical Officer, once a pediatric surgeon in Buenos Aires, now responsible for patching together soldiers between battles. Each face carried the same haunted look. Each set of eyes reflected the same steely resolve. They had all lost someone, family, friends, homes. For 3 years, they had trained, prepared, and waited for this moment. That night, in her quarters, Elena stared at the holographic display of her family. Her fingers hovered over the control panel, hesitating before pulling up her old credentials. United Nations Peace Envoy, Elena Reyes. The woman in that image smiled confidently, believing interspecies cooperation was not just possible but inevitable. How naive she had been. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. Commander, we've received final mission parameters from Admiral Jane. Lieutenant Kim's voice reported. The fleet assembles at coordinates Echo 73 in 12 hours. Acknowledged, Lieutenant. I'll review them immediately. When the transmission ended, Elena closed the holographic displays and moved to her viewport. Earth hung in the distance, its night side dotted with the lights of reconstruction. 2 billion ghosts demanded justice. But as she stared at her homeworld, a question whispered at the edges of her consciousness. If we strike first this time, are we any different from them? She silenced the thought. There was no room for the old Elena Reyes in this new universe. Peace had failed. Now only power remained. Over the next week, the human retribution fleet gathered in the shadows of the Kuiper Belt, far from prying eyes and potential Zephyrian scouts. Elena watched as vessel after vessel arrived. Old cargo freighters converted to stealth frigates, mining ships repurposed as troop carriers, and the crown jewel, the USS Vengeance, humanity's first true dreadnought, built using reverse-engineered Zephyrian technology. Admiral Jane transferred his flag to the Vengeance, summoning Elena aboard for final preparations. The ship's cavernous hangar bay buzzed with activity as combat crews prepared weapon systems and ground forces ran through final drills. Impressive, isn't she? Jane stood at the observation deck, overlooking the 3-mile-long vessel. Dr. Cow's team has incorporated every piece of salvaged Zephyrian technology we could recover. Stealth systems, magnetic railguns, antimatter torpedoes. The Vengeance can match anything they throw at us. And the crew? Veterans, mostly. Survivors from Mumbai, New York, Lagos. Each has personal stakes in this mission. He turned to face her. I'm transferring you to command the Vengeance. Commander, the Vigilance will serve as your scout ship under Lieutenant Commander Patel. Elena tried to mask her surprise. Sir, I've only commanded vessels a quarter this size. You were chosen for more than your tactical acumen. Reyes, your background as a peace envoy gives you perspective the rest of us lack. You understand what we've lost. What's at stake? The briefing that followed confirmed her worst fears. The Ghost Swift reconnaissance ships had penetrated deep into Zephyrian territory, confirming Dr. Cow's theories. The aliens were constructing a massive weapon platform around Kepler 438, the Aegis Bastion. Intelligence suggested it housed something called the Sunshatter Cannon, a weapon capable of incinerating entire continents from light years away. The fleet's mission was explicit: destroy the Bastion, cripple the Zephyrian fleet, and ensure humanity would never face annihilation again. As she reviewed tactical projections with her officers later that day, Elena sensed the tension in the room. Lieutenant Kim, normally unflappable, seemed hesitant. Speak freely, Lieutenant, she prompted after the others had departed. Kim sighed, rubbing his temples. Commander, I've run the simulations a dozen times. The plan will work. We can destroy the Bastion. But the civilian casualties. The intelligence reports indicate at least 30,000 Zephyrian civilians work on that station, not counting dependents. The Zephyrians didn't concern themselves with civilian casualties when they struck Earth, Elena replied, her voice harder than intended. That's precisely my point, Commander. Kim met her gaze directly. If we cross this line, there's no going back. Are we just as monstrous as they were? His words struck uncomfortably close to her own doubts. The Admiral believes this is our only option, Lieutenant. The Sunshatter Cannon could render Earth uninhabitable with a single strike. I understand, Commander. I'll execute my duties. Kim's voice remained steady, though his eyes reflected turmoil. But I think we should at least consider surgical options. Disable the weapon without destroying the entire station. Elena nodded slowly. Draft an alternative plan. I'll review it before we depart. Later, alone in her new quarters aboard the Vengeance, Elena stared at the battle plans. Kim's concerns echoed her own suppressed doubts. Once, she had believed diplomatic solutions existed for any conflict. That faith had died along with her family and 2 billion others. But Kim was right about one thing. Crossing certain lines would change humanity forever. If they destroyed the Bastion without attempting a more targeted approach, would they be fighting monsters or becoming them? A chime interrupted her thoughts. Dr. Cow requesting entry. I've completed analysis of the Bastion's schematics, the scientist said without preamble, laying out detailed projections. Its power core is surprisingly vulnerable. A targeted strike here, she indicated a junction point, could disable the Sunshatter Cannon without destroying the entire station. Elena studied the plans. You've been speaking with Lieutenant Kim. We share similar concerns. Cow's expression remained professional, but her eyes betrayed deeper emotions. Commander, I've dedicated my career to understanding alien species. The Zephyrians are hierarchical, militaristic, but they're not monolithic. Intelligence suggests their war council ordered the Earth strike against the recommendations of their own diplomatic corps. Are you suggesting we should spare those who would annihilate us? I'm suggesting we maintain what separates us from them. Tao's voice was quiet but firm. Tactical necessity doesn't require planetary bombardment or station-wide destruction. We can disable their weapon without slaughtering thousands. Elena considered her words. I'll take your analysis to Admiral Jane. The Admiral's response was swift and unyielding. Surgical strikes leave room for recovery. Commander, our mission isn't to delay their plans. It's to ensure they never threaten Earth again. Sir, with respect, Dr. Cow's analysis suggests we could disable their capability without what, Commander? Without making them understand the consequences of striking Earth? Jane's eyes flashed with barely contained fury. They hit us without warning. They targeted our most populated cities first. They showed no mercy, no restraint. And now you suggest we should offer what they denied us. I'm suggesting we don't become what we're fighting against. Jane fell silent, studying her face. When he spoke again, his voice was controlled, almost gentle. Elena, I know who you were before, a peacemaker, an idealist. But that world is gone. They destroyed it. He gestured toward the viewport, where distant stars marked the direction of Earth. 2 billion dead. Entire bloodlines erased from existence. If we strike with anything less than our full strength, we invite them to try again. And next time, it won't be 2 billion. It will be extinction. Elena had no answer. The weight of command pressed down on her shoulders like a physical force. We depart in 6 hours, Jane said, dismissing her. I expect the Vengeance to lead our vanguard. As she walked the corridors back to her quarters, memories surfaced of her last peacekeeping mission, negotiating ceasefires between human colonial factions on Mars. She had believed then that reason could prevail over hatred, that common ground could be found in even the bitterest conflicts. That Elena Reyes had died with New York. In her place stood a different woman, one who commanded humanity's most powerful warship, whose orders would soon result in thousands of deaths. She touched the holographic pendant at her neck one last time, cycling through images of her family. I won't let them hurt anyone else, she whispered. 6 hours later, the human retribution fleet departed for Zephyrian space, its mission clear: ensure that humanity would never again face extinction. Whether they saved their species' soul in the process remained to be seen. The USS Vengeance led a covert fleet of 15 shadow cruisers through a hidden hyperspace corridor, their approach masked by Dr. Cow's experimental cloaking technology. As they entered the Kepler 438 system, Elena stood on the bridge, watching as the massive orbital structure of Aegis Bastion came into view on their sensors. Magnify, she ordered. The view screen adjusted, revealing the Bastion in detail, a colossal, ring-shaped fortress encircling a smaller planetoid, its surface bristling with weapon emplacements and defensive arrays. At its heart, a massive cannon pointed outward toward the stars, toward Earth. Life signs? Elena asked. Reading approximately 28,000, Lieutenant Kim reported, his expression grave. Primarily military, but at least 7,000 register as civilian dependents. Elena nodded, pushing aside the implications. Status of Zephyrian fleet elements? 12 destroyer-class vessels in standard patrol configuration. No indication they've detected us. This was the moment of truth. According to their intelligence, the Bastion's defenses were formidable, but focused outward, expecting attacks from conventional vectors. The human retribution fleet had approached from what the Zephyrians considered impossible angles, using corridors unmapped in their navigational data. Comms, patch me through to the fleet, Elena ordered. All vessels, this is Commander Reyes. Execute Operation Thunderfall. I repeat, execute Operation Thunderfall. Throughout the fleet, stealth frigates disguised as asteroid chunks pivoted into firing positions. On Elena's command, Dr. Cow activated the prototype virus EMP hybrid developed from captured Zephyrian technology. It spread through the Bastion's communication networks like digital wildfire, temporarily disabling shield arrays and defensive systems. Shield array down, Kim reported. Window of vulnerability estimated at 3 minutes. All vessels commence firing, Elena ordered. The Vengeance's magnetic railguns roared to life, hurling projectiles at relativistic speeds toward the Bastion's superstructure. Simultaneously, the Shadow cruisers launched antimatter torpedoes at designated weak points. The first volley struck with devastating precision, rupturing the station's outer hull and targeting power relays. Direct hits on all primary targets, Kim announced. Bastion defensive systems attempting to reboot. Elena leaned forward. Launch boarding teams. Lieutenant Commander Patel, take your squad and secure the command tower. Primary objective: disable the Sunshatter cannon. Aye, Commander. Patel's voice was steady over the comms as her stealth dropships deployed from the Vengeance's launch base. The Zephyrian response was chaotic but rapidly organizing. The patrol vessels broke formation, accelerating toward the human fleet while the Bastion's secondary defensive batteries came online, filling space with plasma fire. Evasive maneuvers, Elena ordered. Focus fire on those patrol ships. Don't let them coordinate. The bridge shuddered as Zephyrian weapons fire found its mark, glancing off the Vengeance's reinforced hull. Shields holding at 70%, the tactical officer reported. 2 enemy destroyers disabled, 3 more engaging. Elena monitored the tactical display as Lieutenant Commander Patel's boarding teams fought their way through the Bastion's corridors. In close quarters, fierce, hand-to-hand combat erupted between human Marines and Zephyrian defenders. The aliens fought with desperate ferocity, but the humans moved with the cold precision of those with nothing left to lose. Commander, we've reached the central control hub, Patel reported, her transmission punctuated by weapons fire. Encountering heavy resistance, requesting backup. Dispatching second wave, Elena responded. She turned to Dr. Cow. Doctor, I need you to join the boarding team. You're the only one who can ensure the Sunshatter cannon is permanently disabled. Cow's eyes widened. Commander, I'm not a combat specialist. You're the foremost expert on Zephyrian technology. Lieutenant Kim will accompany you with a security detail. Kim nodded grimly, already moving toward the transport bay. As the battle intensified, Elena split her focus between coordinating the fleet engagement and monitoring the boarding team's progress. The Zephyrian defenders fought with increasing desperation as human forces pushed deeper into the Bastion. Commander, we've secured the command tower. Patel reported an hour into the battle. Dr. Cow is accessing the Sunshatter control systems now. Excellent work. Lieutenant Commander, what's the status of the weapon? It appears to be at 80% charge. Dr. Cow believes they were preparing for imminent deployment. Patel's voice hardened. Commander, they were targeting Earth. The targeting coordinates match our solar system. Elena's blood ran cold. Admiral Jane had been right. The Zephyrians had been planning another attack, potentially more devastating than the first. Understood. Proceed with disabling the weapon. Elena turned to her tactical officer. Status of enemy fleet. 7 destroyers neutralized. Remaining vessels are retreating to defensive positions around the Bastion's far side. Maintain pressure. Don't let them regroup. The minutes stretched into hours as the battle raged across the Bastion's vast structure. Elena received regular updates from the boarding teams as they secured key sections and eliminated resistance. Dr. Cow and Lieutenant Kim had reached the Sunshatter cannon's main control chamber and were working to disable its power core. Then, amid the chaos of battle, a transmission cut through that changed everything. Commander! Dr. Ruiz's voice was urgent over the comms. I need immediate assistance in Sector 12. We have civilian casualties, including children. Elena hesitated only briefly. Medical team to Sector 12, she ordered. The battle continued to rage as Dr. Ruiz and his team tended to wounded Zephyrian civilians caught in the crossfire. Reports flooded in of fierce resistance in some sections, while others surrendered when they realized they were outmatched. "Commander, we've accessed the Sun Shatter control systems," Dr. Cao reported. "I'm preparing to overload the primary capacitors, which should render the weapon permanently inoperable." "Proceed, Doctor. Once complete, place demolition charges along the main energy conduits. I want that weapon destroyed beyond any possibility of repair." "Understood, Commander." Elena was about to issue further orders when an urgent transmission from Dr. Ruiz interrupted. "Commander!" His voice was strained, breathing labored. "We're under attack in the civilian sector. I've got wounded children here and—" The sound of weapons fire drowned out his words. "Dr. Ruiz, report, what's happening?" When his voice returned, it was weaker. "Friendly fire. They didn't recognize. Thought I was protecting. Enemy combatants." Elena's heart dropped. "Medical team to Sector 12. Now, Lieutenant. Get me visual." The tactical display shifted, showing helmet camera footage from Marines in Sector 12. What Elena saw struck her to her core. Dr. Ruiz lay on the ground, blood pooling beneath him. Around him, terrified Zephyrian civilians, including several children, huddled behind makeshift barricades. A Marine stood over him, weapon raised. "Stand down!" Elena shouted into the comms. "All forces in Sector 12, stand down immediately!" The Marine lowered his weapon, confusion evident even through his helmet. "Commander, Dr. Ruiz was shielding Zephyrian hostiles. They're civilians, soldier, non-combatants." Elena's voice was ice. "Medical team, status?" The response came moments later. Too late. "Dr. Ruiz is gone, Commander. Took a direct hit protecting a Zephyrian child." Silence fell over the bridge. Dr. Marco Ruiz, once a pediatric surgeon dedicated to saving lives, had died, saving an enemy child from friendly fire. As Elena processed this development, another report came in. "Commander, this is Dr. Cao. The Sun Shatter cannon has been disabled. Demolition charges are set. Lieutenant Kim and I are withdrawing to extraction point." "Acknowledged, Doctor. All boarding teams. Begin withdrawal. Mission complete." As the human forces pulled back to their ships, Elena made a difficult decision. "Tactical. Target the Bastion's reactor core." "Commander?" The officer looked up, surprised. "You heard me. Once our people are clear, I want that station destroyed. The Sun Shatter technology cannot be allowed to survive." "Aye, Commander." As the last of the boarding teams returned to their vessels, the Vengeance's main batteries locked onto the Bastion's central reactor. With a single command from Elena, railgun projectiles tore through the weakened structure, triggering a catastrophic chain reaction. The Aegis Bastion, pride of Zephyrian military engineering and home to thousands, erupted in a blinding flash of energy as its reactor went critical. The shockwave rippled outward, consuming the station's remains and the disabled Zephyrian vessels nearby. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Elena watched in silence. Victory had come at a terrible price, not just in human lives, but in what they had become to achieve it. When she returned to her quarters hours later, she found Lieutenant Kim waiting outside her door. "Commander," he began, his voice low. "Dr. Ruiz." "I know, Lieutenant." Elena felt a bone-deep weariness settling over her. "He died, trying to save those children." "He said something to me before the mission." Kim's eyes reflected inner turmoil. "He told me he became a doctor to heal, not to harm. That even in war, we must remember our humanity." Elena had no answer for him. In destroying the Bastion, they had eliminated an existential threat to Earth. But they had also killed thousands, many of them civilians no different from those lost when the Zephyrians attacked Earth. "Get some rest, Lieutenant," she said finally. "We rendezvous with Admiral Jane in 6 hours." When Kim had gone, Elena stood at her viewport, watching the debris field where Aegis Bastion had once orbited. Somewhere among that wreckage floated the bodies of Dr. Ruiz and the civilians he had tried to save. She touched the holographic pendant at her neck, cycling through images of her family. "I did what was necessary," she whispered to their silent faces. But as she prepared her report for Admiral Jane, she couldn't shake the growing fear that in their quest for justice, humanity was losing something essential, something that Dr. Ruiz had died trying to preserve. "You struck a decisive blow against our enemies, Commander." Admiral Jane's holographic image stood before Elena on the bridge of the Vengeance. "The destruction of Aegis Bastion has sent shockwaves throughout Zephyrian space. Their military command is in disarray." "At what cost, Admiral?" Elena's voice remained professional, though fatigue lined her face. "We lost 73 personnel, including Dr. Ruiz. Casualties are inevitable in war. Commander, what matters is that we prevented another attack on Earth." Jane's expression hardened. "The intelligence you recovered confirms they were preparing for a second strike. The Sunshatter cannon could have rendered our planet uninhabitable." Elena nodded slowly. She couldn't argue with the strategic necessity. Yet Dr. Ruiz's death, and the circumstances surrounding it, haunted her. "What are our next orders, sir?" "The Zephyrian Empire is mobilizing its remaining forces. Our intelligence indicates they're consolidating around what they call the Nexus Point, a strategic hyperspace junction. They're preparing a counterattack, Commander. Over 1,200 ships." "Against our 300? Elena frowned. "Even with our technological advantages, those odds are precisely why we must strike first. Again." Jane's voice was firm. "I'm conscripting the entire human retribution fleet. Every warship, every support craft. We'll meet them at the Nexus Point before they can organize a proper offensive." Elena studied the tactical projections Jane transmitted. The Nexus Point was a critical choke point where several hyperspace routes intersected, ideal for an ambush if they could position their forces correctly. "We'll be outnumbered 4-1, sir, but not outmatched." Jane's confidence was unwavering. "Dr. Cow's team has developed a new weapon, a variant of the virus that disabled the Bastion's shields. They're calling it the Veil virus. It can infect Zephyrian shield generators, causing them to self-detonate. In the ensuing chaos, our stealth vessels can strike with impunity." Elena considered the implications. Such a weapon would cause massive casualties. But if the Zephyrians launch their counter-invasion fleet toward Earth or its colonies— "When do we deploy?" 48 hours. The fleet is already gathering at coordinates I'm transmitting now." Jane paused, studying her. "Commander, I sense your reservations. Remember what's at stake. The Zephyrians struck Earth without provocation. They were preparing to do so again. We cannot afford mercy." After the transmission ended, Elena called her senior officers to the briefing room. Lieutenant Kim, Dr. Cow, and Lieutenant Commander Patel gathered around the tactical display, their faces grim as she relayed Admiral Jane's orders. "The Admiral is correct about one thing," Dr. Cow said, after studying the intelligence reports. "The Zephyrian response will be overwhelming. Their military doctrine demands a show of superior force after a defeat like Aegis Bastion." "Can your Veil virus really disable their shield generators?" Elena asked. Chow nodded hesitantly. "In theory, yes. It targets a specific vulnerability in their shield harmonics. But Commander," she hesitated, "the resulting cascade failure won't just disable their shields. It will cause catastrophic overloads throughout their ship's power systems. We're talking about total vessel failure, life support, engines, everything." "How many casualties?" Lieutenant Kim asked quietly. "If deployed against their entire fleet, potentially hundreds of thousands." Silence fell over the briefing room. Elena looked at each of her officers, all survivors of the Zephyrian attack on Earth, all carrying their own scars and losses. The alternative, she said finally, is allowing them to reach Earth or our colonies, based on their previous attack and what we learned at Aegis Bastion. They won't show restraint. So we become like them to defeat them. Kim's voice was soft but clear. We become what we swore we'd never be, destroyers of worlds. Elena had no easy answer. We've been given our orders. Prepare the ship for combat operations. Dismissed. As the others filed out, Dr. Cow remained behind. Commander, there's something else you should know. She placed a data crystal on the table. Before we destroyed the Bastion, I downloaded their central archives. There's evidence that the original attack on Earth wasn't unanimously supported within their government. Elena's eyes narrowed. Explain. They had a political faction that opposed the first strike. They called themselves the Harmony Conclave. They argued for continued observation of Earth, rather than preemptive action. Cow's expression was troubled. They were overruled by the War Council, but the debate was apparently quite contentious. Why are you telling me this now, Doctor? Because I believe it's important to remember that, even among our enemies, there are those who sought another path. Chow met her gaze steadily. Just as there are those among us who question whether this war can end with anything but mutual destruction. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of preparation. The human retribution fleet gathered at the designated coordinates, 300 warships and 800 support craft, the largest armada humanity had ever assembled. At its heart, the USS Vengeance stood ready to lead the vanguard into battle. Elena spent the final hours before deployment in quiet reflection. She reviewed the battle plan repeatedly, searching for alternatives that might reduce casualties while still achieving their objective. There were none. The Zephyrians were coming with overwhelming force, and humanity's only advantage was the element of surprise. As the fleet prepared to jump to the Nexus point, Elena addressed her crew one final time. 3 years ago, Earth faced an unprovoked attack that claimed 2 billion lives. Today, we stand between our homeworld and those who would finish what they started. We fight not just for vengeance, but for survival. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. But remember this. How we win matters as much as whether we win. We are human. That means something. Carry that knowledge into battle. With her final orders given, Elena took her place on the bridge as the fleet entered hyperspace, bound for the Nexus point and a confrontation that would determine the future of both species. The human retribution fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edges of the Nexus point, cloaking systems engaged. Before them stretched a vast intersection of cosmic pathways, swirling hyperspace currents and dense asteroid fields creating a natural choke point in space. And arriving, just as intelligence had predicted, came the Zephyrian counter-invasion fleet. Elena watched from the Vengeance's bridge as the enemy armada materialized. Over 1,200 warships in tight formation, their hulls bearing the distinctive crystalline patterns of Zephyrian military vessels. At their center loomed massive dreadnoughts, each capable of laying waste to an entire continent. All vessels maintain silent running, Elena ordered. Hold positions until the entire enemy fleet has entered the junction. For nearly an hour, the human fleet watched and waited as the Zephyrian armada positioned itself within the Nexus point. Their formation suggested confidence, perhaps even arrogance. They clearly didn't expect resistance this far from Earth. Commander, Lieutenant Kim reported softly. Their vanguard has passed the Alpha marker. The entire fleet is now within the engagement zone. Elena nodded. Dr. Cow, status of the Veil virus? Deployment systems ready. Once activated, the virus will spread through their communication networks and target shield generators across their fleet. Lieutenant Commander Patel, are our stealth frigates in position? Yes, Commander. All vessels report ready. Elena took a deep breath. This was the moment, the point of no return. Once they engaged, there would be no possibility of retreat for either side. The Nexus Point's unique properties would prevent hyperspace jumps until the battle was resolved. All vessels, this is Commander Reyes. Execute Operation Fallen Star. I repeat, execute Operation Fallen Star. Throughout the human fleet, cloaked vessels emerged from their hiding places among the asteroid fields. The vanguard of stealth frigates struck first, their weapons piercing the Zephyrian vanguard's unprepared defenses. Simultaneously, Dr. Cow activated the Veil virus, sending it cascading through enemy communication channels. The effect was immediate and devastating. Across the Zephyrian fleet, shield generators began to overload, releasing catastrophic energy surges through their ship's systems. Explosions blossomed in silence as vessel after vessel lost power or detonated outright. Virus deployment successful, Dr. Cow reported, her voice tight. Approximately 40% of enemy vessels affected. All battle groups, advance and engage, Elena ordered. Target their command ships first, then move to their support vessels. The human retribution fleet surged forward, weapons blazing. What the humans lacked in numbers, they made up for in tactical precision and the element of surprise. The Vengeance led the charge, its railguns tearing through disabled Zephyrian dreadnoughts, while antimatter torpedoes devastated their fighter screens. But the Zephyrians were not so easily defeated. As the initial shock wore off, their remaining vessels reorganized with remarkable speed, forming defensive clusters around their surviving command ships. Their return fire intensified, catching several human frigates in devastating crossfire. "Evasive maneuvers," Elena ordered, as the Vengeance shuddered under enemy fire. "Battle Group Theta, flank their eastern formation. Cut off their retreat vectors." The bridge rocked as Zephyrian energy weapons found their mark. Damage reports flooded in from across the ship, but the Vengeance's reinforced hull held. "Shield integrity at 60%, the tactical officer reported. "We've lost contact with the Defiant and the Sentinel." Elena grimaced. Those were good ships with experienced crews. "Continue the advance. We can't give them time to regroup." The battle raged for hours, a desperate struggle of attrition. The initial human advantage had evened out as the Zephyrians recovered from their surprise, bringing their superior numbers to bear. For every enemy vessel destroyed, it seemed another took its place. "Commander," Lieutenant Kim called out. "Their flagship is deploying reinforcements from hyperspace. Another 200 vessels incoming." Elena studied the tactical display. The arrival of Zephyrian reinforcements would tip the scales decisively against them. They needed something drastic. "Lieutenant Kim, take control of the secondary bridge. I need you to coordinate our remaining stealth frigates for a precision strike on their command ship." "Commander, that would require someone to manually designate targeting coordinates from within their defensive perimeter." Kim's eyes widened as he realized what she was suggesting. A suicide mission. Not suicide. Calculated risk. Elena's voice was steady. "Go, Lieutenant. I need our best tactical officer on this." Kim nodded grimly and departed for the secondary command center. Meanwhile, the battle continued to deteriorate. Human vessels were being destroyed at an increasing rate as Zephyrian forces coordinated their attacks more effectively. "Commander," Lieutenant Commander Patel's voice came urgently over the comms. "I've identified a weakness in their formation. Their reinforcements are creating a temporary gap in their defenses. If we could deploy a high-yield EMP burst at these coordinates, we might disrupt their entire command structure." "Can you get a missile through?" "Negative. Their point defenses are too dense. It would need to be delivered manually." Patel's voice hardened. "I can do it, Commander. The Vigilance is fast enough to slip through their lines." Elena hesitated. Patel was proposing what amounted to a one-way mission. The Vigilance would never escape the resulting EMP blast. "There must be another way, Lieutenant Commander." "There isn't. And you know it." Patel's determination came through clearly. My family died in Mumbai. Commander, let me make this count. After a moment's silence, Elena gave her consent. Proceed. Lieutenant Commander, may your path be clear. On the tactical display, Elena watched as the USS Vigilance broke formation, accelerating toward the gap in the Zephyrian defenses. Lieutenant Commander Patel had overridden the ship's decoy signature, making it appear to enemy sensors as a much larger vessel, drawing fire away from the human fleet's vulnerable sectors. She's through their outer perimeter, the tactical officer reported, awe in his voice. Taking heavy fire but still advancing. The Vigilance pushed deeper into enemy territory, its shields failing under concentrated Zephyrian fire. Yet it continued its desperate charge toward the enemy command ship, closing the distance with each passing second. EMP device armed, Patel reported, her transmission breaking up. 10 seconds to optimal deployment range. All vessels, prepare for electromagnetic pulse. Elena warned the fleet. Shield your systems. The Vigilance disappeared in a blinding flash as it collided with a Zephyrian dreadnought. The resulting explosion unleashed the EMP burst, sending a wave of energy cascading through the enemy formation. Ship after ship went dark as their systems failed, leaving them vulnerable to the human fleet's weapons. All vessels, concentrate fire on disabled targets, Elena ordered, her voice tight with emotion. Don't let Lieutenant Commander Patel's sacrifice be in vain. The tide of battle shifted dramatically. With their command structure in disarray and many vessels disabled, the Zephyrian fleet began to fragment. What had been an organized counteroffensive became a desperate struggle for survival. Hours later, it was over. The Zephyrian fleet lay in ruins. Fewer than 50 ships managed to retreat toward their home system. But the human victory had come at a terrible cost. 120 ships destroyed, including the Vigilance and 3 stealth frigates. 3,000 crew members had perished. As Elena surveyed the aftermath from the Vengeance's bridge, Admiral Jane's transmission arrived. They thought they could break us. Instead, they woke a sleeping giant, one that knows no mercy. The words should have brought satisfaction. Instead, Elena felt only a hollow ache as she remembered Lieutenant Commander Patel's final moments. Lieutenant Kim's grim determination as he coordinated the precision strikes that turned the tide, and Dr. Cow's silent tears as she monitored the Veil virus's devastating effects. They had won a decisive victory. Earth and its colonies were safe, for now. But as Elena looked out at the debris field that had once been thousands of Zephyrian vessels and their crews, she wondered what kind of future they were securing through such destruction. In her quarters that night, Elena recorded her personal log. We survived today because brave men and women were willing to sacrifice everything. Lieutenant Commander Patel, Lieutenant Kim, and countless others fought not for vengeance, but for the future of our species. She paused, weighing her next words carefully. But I fear that future grows darker with each battle. Dr. Ruiz died trying to save a Zephyrian child. His compassion, once the cornerstone of human virtue, is now seen as weakness. If we continue down this path, what will remain of humanity when the fighting ends? She closed the log and prepared for the journey home. The Zephyrians could no longer field a credible threat against Earth. But the war was far from over. Already, factions within Earth's governing council were debating the next steps. Should they push for a peace treaty now that they held the advantage, or press on until the Zephyrian threat was permanently eliminated? Elena knew which course Admiral Jane would advocate. The question was whether she could continue to follow those orders without losing what remained of her soul. 2 weeks after the Battle of the Nexus Point, Elena found herself summoned to Earth for an emergency session of the Governing Council. The Vengeance docked at the rebuilt orbital platform above what had once been the Atlantic seaboard. Its crew granted brief shore leave while repairs continued. Elena took the opportunity to visit the Garden of Fallen Nations in Berlin, Now, a reinforced memorial for the victims of the Zephyrian attack. The garden stretched for miles, each section dedicated to a different destroyed city. In the New York quadrant, she found her family's names etched into the crystalline monument alongside millions of others. As she stood there, a familiar voice broke her reverie. "They would be proud of what you've accomplished, Commander." Elena turned to find Admiral Jane approaching, his formal uniform bearing new medals, rewards for the victory at the nexus point. "Would they?" she asked quietly. "My father was a professor of ethics at Columbia. My mother worked with refugee resettlement programs. I wonder what they would think of what we've become." Jane's expression remained impassive. "They would understand the necessity. Sometimes survival requires difficult choices." "Like the choice before the council today?" Elena met his gaze directly. "I've heard the debates. Admiral, the Total Victory faction wants to press on to Zephyria Prime itself. A full-scale planetary bombardment. The Zephyrians have been weakened, but not defeated. Their industrial capacity remains intact. Given time, they could rebuild their fleets, develop new weapons, or sue for peace." Elena gestured at the memorial around them. "Haven't enough died already?" Jane's eyes hardened. That's exactly what the limited peace treaty advocates argue. They forget that the Zephyrians struck first, without provocation, without warning. They forget the 2 billion souls memorialized here. He stepped closer. "You were there at Aegis Bastion. You saw the Sunshatter cannon they were preparing to unleash on Earth. Do you really believe they would honor any treaty once they've recovered their strength?" Elena had no immediate answer. The evidence suggested the Admiral was right. The Zephyrian military leadership seemed committed to humanity's extinction. Yet Dr. Cow's revelations about the Harmony Conclave, the political faction that had opposed the initial attack, lingered in her mind. "The Council meets in 2 hours," Jane continued. "Your testimony about Aegis Bastion and the Nexus Point will carry significant weight. Consider carefully what future you wish to secure for our species, Commander." After he departed, Elena remained at the memorial, thoughts churning. The decision before the Council would determine not just the course of the war, but the soul of humanity itself. If they opted for total victory, the complete annihilation of the Zephyrian homeworld, would anything remain of the civilization they claimed to defend? When she arrived at the Council chambers, she found the session already in progress. Representatives from Earth's surviving nations and colonial settlements filled the circular hall, their faces grave as they debated humanity's next move. Commander Reyes, the Council Chair, formerly the Secretary-General of the United Nations, acknowledged her entrance. "We were just discussing the intelligence you recovered from Aegis Bastion. Dr. Cow's analysis suggests the Zephyrians have significant divisions within their leadership regarding their conflict with Earth." Elena took her designated seat, noting Dr. Cow's presence at the witness table. The scientist looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, suggesting sleepless nights. "That's correct, Madam Chair. The archives indicated a political faction called the Harmony Conclave opposed the initial attack on Earth. They were overruled by their war council." A murmur ran through the chamber. The representative from the African Union leaned forward. "And you believe this faction might be receptive to peace negotiations?" Before Elena could respond, Admiral Jane interjected from his position near the chair. "The existence of political dissent within their empire is irrelevant. Their military leadership has demonstrated their intentions twice now. The Sunshatter cannon was designed with a single purpose: the annihilation of Earth." "With respect, Admiral," Dr. Cow spoke up, her voice quiet but firm. "The political landscape matters greatly. If there are Zephyrians who oppose the war, they could form the foundation for lasting peace." "A peace that lasts until they rebuild their fleets?" Jane's tone was dismissive. 2 billion dead, Doctor. How many more must die before you recognize the threat cannot be negotiated away?" The debate continued for hours, growing increasingly heated. The Total Victory faction, led by Admiral Jane, pushed for Operation Last Dawn, a full-scale assault on Zapiria Prime, carried out by the combined Human Retribution Fleet. The Limited Peace Treaty advocates argued for opening diplomatic channels with moderate Zephyrian factions while maintaining military pressure. When Elena was finally called to testify, she chose her words carefully. "I commanded our forces at both Aegis Bastion and the Nexus Point. I've witnessed firsthand the Zephyrian military's capabilities and their willingness to target civilian populations." She paused, looking around the chamber. "I've also seen the cost of our victories, not just in lives lost, but in what we've become to achieve them." Admiral Jane's expression darkened, but Elena continued. "At Aegis Bastion, Dr. Marco Ruiz, a pediatric surgeon from Buenos Aires, gave his life protecting Zephyrian children caught in the crossfire. He reminded us, with his final act, that compassion is not weakness. It's the core of what makes us human." Silence fell over the chamber. Elena met Jane's gaze directly. "I believe the Zephyrian threat must be neutralized, but I also believe there must be a line we refuse to cross, a point at which victory becomes meaningless because we've sacrificed everything that defined us." The council deliberated through the night. By morning, a decision had been reached. Operation Last Dawn would proceed, but with modified objectives. Rather than planetary bombardment, the human fleet would target Zephyrian military installations and command structures, offering surrender terms to civilian populations. It was a compromise that satisfied neither faction completely, but one that Elena could live with. As she prepared to return to the Vengeance, Dr. Cow approached her in the corridor outside the council chambers. "Thank you for your testimony, Commander," the scientist said quietly. "I feared they would authorize the most extreme measures. They still might." Elena's expression was somber. "Admiral Jane commands the fleet. Once we're in Zephyrian space, he'll have significant operational discretion." Chow nodded grimly. "Which is why I've been reassigned to your ship. The Council wants me to oversee the deployment of our new weapon systems, to ensure they're used as authorized." "New weapons?" "A variant of the Veil virus, designed to target their planetary defense systems rather than ships. And..." Chow hesitated. "A planet-killing nanite sphere, for use only as a last resort. If the Zephyrians deploy weapons of mass destruction against our fleet..." Elena felt a chill run through her. "A planet killer. So we're prepared to do exactly what we fear they might do to us. The difference, they would argue, is that we won't use it unless provoked." Cow's eyes reflected her doubt. "I'm not sure that distinction means much when we're talking about billions of lives." "Nor am I, Doctor." Elena straightened, her decision made. "We'll follow our orders, but we'll also remember Dr. Ruiz's example. There are lines we won't cross, not even to win this war." 3 days later, the Human Retribution Fleet departed Earth orbit, bound for Zapiria Prime. 500 vessels strong, armed with humanity's most advanced weapons. They carried with them the fate of 2 civilizations, and hidden in the secure laboratory aboard the Vengeance, sealed under the highest security protocols, waited the nanite sphere, a weapon capable of reducing an entire world to sterile dust. The journey to Zapiria Prime took 17 days through hyperspace, each moment heavy with the knowledge of what lay ahead. Elena spent the time reviewing tactical projections, studying Zephyrian defense capabilities, and meeting with her officers to plan the coming assault. Dr. Cow worked tirelessly in her laboratory, refining the Veil virus variant to minimize civilian casualties while ensuring it would disable Zephyrian planetary defenses. Lieutenant Kim, who had survived his dangerous mission during the Nexus Point battle, led tactical simulations for the ground forces that would secure key military installations. As they approached Zephyrian space, Elena called her senior staff for a final briefing. Our intelligence suggests Zapiria Prime has reinforced its orbital defenses since the Nexus Point battle, she began, displaying tactical projections. They've recalled their remaining fleet elements to form a defensive perimeter around the homeworld. How many vessels? Lieutenant Kim asked. Approximately 200, plus orbital defense platforms. Elena highlighted key points in the projection. Our first objective is to neutralize their defense grid. Dr. Cow's Veil virus variant will target their shield systems and weapons platforms, creating windows for our ground forces to deploy. And the civilian population? Kim's question hung in the air. Current estimates place it at 12 billion, Dr. Cow answered quietly. The Council's orders are clear. Military targets only. Civilian casualties are to be minimized. Elena nodded. Once their orbital defenses are compromised, I'll lead the ground assault with Battalion Alpha. Our primary objectives are their military command centers and the Royal Palace, where intelligence suggests Emperor Zexthal is coordinating their remaining forces. The palace will be heavily defended, Kim warned. Their royal guard is reportedly fanatical in their loyalty. Which is why I'll be going personally. Elena's expression was resolute. The Council wants Zexthal captured alive if possible. His surrender might convince their remaining military leaders to stand down. The briefing continued for another hour, covering contingencies and extraction protocols. When it concluded, Elena returned to her quarters to prepare for the coming battle. As she checked her combat gear, a chime announced a visitor, Dr. Cow. Commander, may I speak with you privately? Elena nodded, securing the door. What is it, Doctor? Cow's expression was troubled. I've received additional orders from Admiral Jane regarding the nanite sphere. What orders? He wants it prepared for immediate deployment upon his command, regardless of whether the Zephyrians use weapons of mass destruction. Cow's voice dropped to a whisper. He intends to use it, Commander, not as a last resort, but as soon as the fleet secures orbital superiority. Elena felt ice form in her veins. That contradicts the Council's explicit instructions. The Admiral believes the Council lacks the resolve to do what's necessary. He argues that as long as Zapiria Prime exists, Earth will never be truly safe. 12 billion lives, Elena said softly. Most of them civilians with no say in their government's decisions. Cow nodded grimly. I've been ordered to transfer control of the nanite sphere to Dr. Amy Foster. She's been appointed head of the Bio-Warfare Division. She shares the Admiral's perspective. Elena paced the small confines of her quarters, mind racing. If Jane deployed the nanite sphere against a largely civilian population, it would be genocide, far beyond anything the Zephyrians had done to Earth. Yet direct insubordination against the Admiral during a combat operation would be treason. Can you delay the transfer? She asked finally. For perhaps 12 hours. I can cite calibration requirements, safety protocols. Do it. Give me time to assess the situation once we engage their defenses. Elena's expression hardened with resolve. And, Doctor, secure access to the nanite sphere's control systems. If it comes to it, I want options. Chow nodded, understanding the unspoken implication. Commander, if we move against the Admiral, then we'll face the consequences. But I won't be party to the annihilation of 12 billion souls without exhausting every alternative first. When Chow departed, Elena sat at her desk and recorded a secure message to be delivered to the Council Chair in the event of her death or court-martial. I believe Admiral Jane intends to exceed his authority and deploy the nanite sphere against Zapiria Prime without provocation. I am taking steps to ensure the Council's orders are followed, regardless of personal consequences. With that final contingency in place, she returned to the bridge. The Vengeance was approaching the outer boundary of Zephyrian space. Soon, they would make the final hyperspace jump to Zapiria Prime itself. All hands to battle stations, she ordered. Prepare for combat operations. The human retribution fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Zephyrian home system, immediately deploying into combat formation. Before them hung Zephyria Prime, a lush, temperate world of emerald forests and cobalt seas, its cities glittering like jewels against the landscape. Surrounding it, a defensive screen of warships and orbital platforms stood ready. All vessels, this is Commander Reyes. Commence Operation Last Dawn. I repeat, commence Operation Last Dawn. The human fleet surged forward, weapons blazing. The Vengeance led the vanguard, its railguns decimating the first wave of Zephyrian defense platforms, while automated drones deployed the Veil virus against orbital satellites. First wave of defenses neutralized, Lieutenant Kim reported, proceeding to Phase 2. The battle for Zephyria Prime had begun. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Elena watched as humanity's revenge against those who had struck Earth unfolded according to plan. Yet beneath her professional demeanor, a deeper conflict raged, one that would determine not just the outcome of this battle, but the soul of the species she had sworn to protect. The initial orbital engagement proceeded exactly as planned. The human retribution fleet overwhelmed Zephyria Prime's outer defenses, creating breaches in their shield network through which ground forces could deploy. Within hours, human dropships descended through the atmosphere, carrying Elena and Battalion Alpha toward the planet's surface. Approaching drop zone, the pilot announced as their vessel bucked through atmospheric turbulence. Zephyrian anti-aircraft fire intensifying. Elena secured her combat helmet, addressing the Marines around her. Remember your objectives. Secure the command center. Neutralize military resistance. Minimize civilian casualties. We're soldiers, not executioners. The dropship touched down amid the chaos of battle, ramps deploying to release Battalion Alpha into the outskirts of the Zephyrian capital. What had once been a city of crystalline spires and bioluminescent architecture now burned under human bombardment, its skyline fractured and smoking. Advance by squads, Elena ordered, leading her forces toward the central military complex. Stay alert for civilian movements. As they pushed deeper into the city, Elena maintained constant communication with the orbital command. Dr. Cao reported the Veil virus had successfully compromised 80% of planetary defenses, while Lieutenant Kim coordinated tactical strikes from orbit against remaining resistance. Commander, Dr. Cao's transmission came through with urgency. Admiral Jane is ordering the deployment of bio-nanite clouds in the upper atmosphere. They'll indiscriminately affect everyone within the contamination zone, military and civilian alike. Elena's blood ran cold. On whose authority? His own. He's citing battlefield discretion under operational protocols. Elena made a split-second decision. Belay that order, Doctor. The Council authorized targeted strikes against military assets only. Atmospheric denial weapons weren't part of the approved operation. Commander? Cao's voice dropped. Dr. Foster is preparing the nanite sphere for deployment. She's received direct orders from the Admiral to position it for planet-wide distribution once you've secured the palace. So it had come to this. Admiral Jane intended to sterilize Zephyria Prime, regardless of the Council's restrictions. A genocide that would dwarf even the Zephyrian attack on Earth. Understood, Doctor. Maintain your position and await my signal. Elena switched channels. Lieutenant Kim, I need a direct line to the Council Chair, Priority Alpha. That may be difficult, Commander. Admiral Jane has restricted all non-tactical communications from the fleet. Of course he had. Elena's mind raced through options, each more desperate than the last. Finally, she made her choice. Lieutenant, continue coordinating orbital support. I'm advancing on the palace with Alpha Team. Once inside, I'll attempt to secure Emperor Zexthal personally. Understood. Commander, be advised. The Palace District is heavily fortified. Royal Guard units have established defensive perimeters at all approach vectors. Acknowledged. Reyes out. Elena led her forces through the burning city, pushing toward the Imperial Palace at its heart. The fighting intensified as they encountered elite Zephyrian defenders, the High Wardens and Royal Guard, determined to protect their emperor to the last. In a plaza before the palace gates, they faced their fiercest resistance yet. High Warden Thaxra, commander of the emperor's personal guard, led a desperate stand against the human advance. "Fall back and regroup," Elena ordered, as plasma fire cut through their formation. "Suppressing fire on the eastern approach." The battle devolved into brutal close-quarters combat. Elena found herself facing Thaxra directly, the Zephyrian commander's ceremonial armor gleaming despite the carnage around them. "Your world killed billions of my people," Elena said, weapon raised. "As you now do to mine." Thaxra's translator rendered her words in flat, emotionless tones. Is this justice human, or merely the next turn in an endless cycle? There was no time for philosophy. Elena engaged the High Warden in fierce combat, their weapons clashing amid the ruins of what had once been a cultural landmark. Thaxra fought with the precision and dedication of one who had spent a lifetime mastering warfare. Not out of hatred, Elena realized, but out of duty to her emperor and people. When Elena's plasma blade finally pierced Thaxra's defenses, the Zephyrian commander fell to her knees, dark ichor seeping from her wounds. "Finish it," Thaxra demanded. "Grant me a warrior's end." Elena hesitated, then lowered her weapon. "I didn't come to execute prisoners. Where is Emperor Zexthal?" "The palace bunker. He refuses to flee while his people suffer." A sound, like bitter laughter, escaped Thaxra's translator. "He believes he can still negotiate peace with creatures who bombard civilian cities." As human forces secured the plaza, Elena ordered medical attention for wounded prisoners, including Thaxra. Then, she led Alpha Team into the palace itself, pushing through diminishing resistance toward the underground bunker where Zexthal awaited. They found him not cowering, but seated calmly at a command console, monitoring reports from across his dying world. Emperor Zexthal was smaller than Elena had expected, his crystalline exoskeleton more delicate than the warriors they had faced. "So," he said as Elena entered, her weapon trained on him, "the envoy becomes the executioner. How fitting." Elena tensed. "You know who I am?" "Elena Reyes, once a peace delegate to the Proxima colonies, now commander of the Human Vengeance Fleet." Zexthal's multifaceted eyes studied her. "We have extensive files on potential human intermediaries. Before the War Council overruled us, the Harmony Conclave had hoped to open diplomatic channels. Before you destroyed our cities and killed 2 billion of our people," Elena countered. "A decision I opposed." Zexthal's translator conveyed surprising emotion. "The War Council believed humanity's rapid technological advancement posed an existential threat. They advocated preemptive action, a first strike to ensure Zephyrian survival." He gestured at the monitors, showing his burning world. "Now we reap the consequences of their fear." Elena maintained her guard as her team secured the bunker. "You expect me to believe you oppose the attack on Earth?" "Believe what you wish. The archives at the Harmony Conclave would have confirmed my position, but I suspect your forces have already destroyed them." Zexthal rose slowly. "I assume you've come to take me prisoner. I will not resist, if you grant one request. You're not in a position to make demands." "Not a demand. A plea." Zexthal gestured to a communication console. "Allow me to broadcast evacuation orders to remaining civilian centers. Millions of non-combatants, children, elders, scholars, could be spared if given time to reach shelter." Elena hesitated. Admiral Jane would view any delay as insubordination, especially with the nanite sphere prepared for deployment. Yet, she couldn't deny the reasonableness of the request. Before she could decide, a transmission cut through on the emergency channel. "Commander Reyes, this is Dr. Cao. The Admiral has ordered immediate deployment of the nanite sphere. Dr. Foster has already loaded it into a delivery vehicle, bound for the palace bunker. Elena's heart dropped. Timeline: 20 minutes. Maximum. The Admiral is claiming you've been compromised, that Emperor Zexthal has taken you hostage. He's using it as justification to proceed with full planetary sterilization. So this was Jane's endgame, using her ground assault as cover to position the planet killer, then claiming emergency protocols to justify its use. Once the nanites activated, they would spread across Superior Prime in hours, devouring all organic matter in their path. 12 billion lives erased to satisfy one man's conception of justice. Doctor, can you override the delivery vehicle's navigation? Negative. It's on a hardwired approach vector, and Dr. Foster has locked me out of the control systems. Elena made her decision. Divert all available power to the fleet's communication array. Broadcast on the Emergency Council frequency with my authorization code. Tell them Admiral Jane has exceeded his authority and is attempting unauthorized deployment of a planet-killing weapon. Commander, that would be direct insubordination. It's the right thing to do, Doctor. And if we fail? Elena looked at Zexthal, seeing not an enemy, but another leader trying to protect their people. Then history can judge us both. She turned to the Emperor. You have your broadcast. Make it quick. We have less than 20 minutes before a nanite sphere arrives that will reduce this world to ash. Zexthal moved to the communication console, broadcasting evacuation orders in the Zephyrian language. As bunker alarms blared and civilians began moving toward designated shelters, Elena established a secure connection to her ship. Lieutenant Kim, I need options. How do we stop a nanite delivery vehicle once it's launched? The outer casing is hardened against conventional weapons, Kim replied, his voice tight with tension. A direct hit from a capital ship's main battery might destroy it, but that would scatter active nanites across the impact zone. What about containment? Theoretically, the sphere requires a specific activation sequence. If we could intercept it before activation and place it in a magnetically sealed container. It was a desperate plan, but the only one available. Elena ordered her team to prepare for the delivery vehicle's arrival, using the palace bunker's defensive systems to track its approach. Commander, one of her officers called out. Incoming transmission from Admiral Jane. The Admiral's face appeared on the bunker's main screen, his expression cold with fury. Commander Reyes, you have been relieved of duty. Emperor Zexthal is to be terminated immediately, and your forces are to withdraw from the palace bunker. With respect, Admiral, I cannot comply with that order. Elena stood firm. The Council authorized targeted strikes against military assets, not planetary genocide. The nanite sphere was approved for use only if the Zephyrians deployed weapons of mass destruction against our fleet. I am exercising emergency powers under Directive 7 Alpha, Jane responded. As long as Superior Prime exists, Earth remains at risk. We struck their Aegis bastion. They built another. We destroyed their fleet at the nexus point. They recalled reinforcements. This ends today, Commander, with their complete elimination. 2 billion dead on Earth doesn't justify 12 billion on Superior Prime. Admiral, especially when evidence suggests their leadership was divided on the attack. Elena gestured to Zexthal. The Emperor claims he opposed the first strike. If true, there's potential for a negotiated peace. Peace? Jane's laugh was bitter. While you debate philosophy, Commander, I am ensuring humanity's survival. The delivery vehicle will reach your position in 11 minutes. Either evacuate your forces or perish with the enemy. The transmission cut off abruptly. Elena turned to her team. Anyone who wishes to withdraw, do so now. What follows will likely be considered mutiny. Not a single soldier moved. Their expressions showed confusion, fear, but also determination. We're with you, Commander, her second-in-command affirmed. Whatever comes next. What came next was a desperate race against time. As the nanite delivery vehicle approached, Elena coordinated with Dr. Cao and Lieutenant Kim to attempt interception. Palace defenses were repurposed to slow the vehicle's descent, while Elena's team prepared the bunker's containment field, designed for experimental Zephyrian technology, to hold the sphere if they could secure it before activation. "Vehicle entering final approach," Kim reported. "Impact in 2 minutes." "Containment field ready," Elena confirmed. "All non-essential personnel, evacuate to minimum safe distance." As the countdown reached its final seconds, Elena faced Emperor Zexthal across the bunker's command center. "If we succeed in containing the sphere, what then? Your military still has the capability to threaten Earth." "The military follows the throne," Zexthal replied simply. "If I order a permanent ceasefire, they will comply. The question is whether your admiral will accept such terms." Before Elena could respond, the bunker shook violently as the delivery vehicle breached the outer defenses. Alarms blared as automatic systems tracked its descent toward the central chamber. "Brace for impact!" Elena shouted as the vehicle crashed through the ceiling, its reinforced hull barely damaged by the journey. In the chaos that followed, Elena's team moved with practiced precision. As the vehicle's outer shell began to open, revealing the nanite sphere within, they activated the containment field. Blue energy enveloped the sphere, suspending it in mid-air before the activation sequence could complete. "Field holding at 80%, an officer reported. "But it's drawing massive power. We can't maintain this indefinitely." Elena approached the suspended sphere, a deceptively small device for something capable of planetary genocide. "Dr. Cao, what are our options for neutralizing it permanently?" "The control mechanisms are heavily encrypted," Cao replied over the comms. "Without Dr. Foster's access codes, our only option is to maintain containment until the nanites expire naturally, approximately 72 hours. 72 hours they didn't have. Admiral Jane would send forces to retrieve the sphere, and the bunker's defenses couldn't withstand a determined assault for that long. It was Emperor Zexthal who offered an alternative. Our scientists developed countermeasures against nanite weapons during the Helix conflict. The research facility in the southern hemisphere might have technology that could neutralize your sphere." "A convenient claim," Elena said skeptically. "I have no reason to lie. Commander, if that sphere activates, my world dies." Zexthal's translator conveyed urgency. "The facility is 2,000 kilometers from here. With your ship's speed, you could reach it in hours." Before Elena could decide, alarms blared again, this time signaling an incoming transmission from Earth. To her shock, the face that appeared belonged not to Admiral Jane, but to the Council Chair. "Commander Reyes, we've received Dr. Cao's emergency transmission. The Council is convening an emergency session regarding Admiral Jane's actions. Until we reach a determination, you are ordered to maintain control of the nanite sphere and prevent its deployment. The Admiral has been temporarily relieved pending investigation." Hope flickered to life within Elena. "Madam Chair, Emperor Zexthal has offered conditional surrender and a permanent ceasefire. He claims research exists that could neutralize the nanite sphere safely." The chair's expression remained cautious. "Can his claims be verified?" "Not without accessing the facility he describes. But he has already broadcast evacuation orders to civilian centers rather than military rallying points. His actions suggest sincerity. Proceed with caution. Commander, if there's an opportunity to end this conflict without further genocide, the Council is willing to explore it. But the nanite sphere must remain secure at all costs." "Understood, Madam Chair." When the transmission ended, Elena turned to Zexthal. "I'll dispatch a team to investigate your research facility. In the meantime, you will remain under guard here. If this is a deception—" "It is not," Zexthal assured her. "I have already lost too much to this war." The next 12 hours passed in tense vigilance. Elena maintained a skeleton crew in the bunker to monitor the containment field while dispatching scouts to the research facility. Meanwhile, Dr. Cao worked remotely to strengthen the field's integrity as power fluctuations threatened to destabilize it. Reports from orbit indicated Admiral Jane had withdrawn to the edge of the system with a portion of the fleet loyal to him. The remaining vessels acknowledged the Council's temporary orders, maintaining defensive positions around Zapiria Prime without continuing the bombardment. "Commander," Lieutenant Kim reported, "our scouts have reached the research facility. It appears intact and contains equipment matching the Emperor's description." Relief washed through Elena. "Prepare a transport. I'll lead a team to retrieve whatever can neutralize the sphere." "Commander, is that wise? If something happens to you, then you'll continue the mission." "Lieutenant," Elena's voice was firm, "I won't order my people to undertake risks I'm unwilling to face myself." The journey to the southern facility took 3 hours by shuttle. When they arrived, Elena found a sprawling complex nestled among Zapiria Prime's verdant mountains, remarkably untouched by the war raging across the planet. Inside, Zephyrian scientists, who had received orders directly from their emperor, led Elena's team to a containment vault. Within it rested what appeared to be a crystalline matrix, pulsing with bioluminescent energy. "The countermeasure," the lead scientist explained through a translator, "developed during the Helix conflict to combat autonomous nanite weapons. It emits a specific frequency that disrupts their programming, rendering them inert." "Will it work on our sphere?" Elena asked. "The principle should apply to any nanite-based weapon, regardless of origin. Once activated in proximity to your device, it will initiate a cascading shutdown sequence." Elena ordered the matrix secured for transport back to the palace bunker. As her team prepared to depart, an urgent transmission came through from Dr. Cao. "Commander, we have a situation. Admiral Jane has dispatched a strike team to the bunker. They're demanding access to the nanite sphere under direct emergency authority." "Stall them, Doctor. We're en route with the countermeasure." "There's more," Cao continued, her voice tense. "The containment field is destabilizing faster than anticipated. At current degradation rates, it will fail within 4 hours." Elena quickened their preparations. "Inform the Council. We're on our way." The return journey was fraught with danger as Jane's loyalists attempted to intercept their shuttle. Only the skilled piloting of Elena's team and support from vessels still following Council orders allowed them to reach the palace. When they arrived, they found the bunker surrounded by a standoff, Marines loyal to Jane facing those who had remained with Elena, neither side willing to fire on fellow humans. "Stand down," Elena ordered as she emerged from the shuttle, the crystalline matrix secured in a containment case. "I am still the commanding officer of this mission, by Council authority." The standoff held for tense moments before Jane's forces reluctantly stepped aside. Inside the bunker, the situation had deteriorated further. The containment field fluctuated wildly, the nanite sphere within beginning to activate despite their efforts. "The field won't hold much longer," Dr. Cao reported, her face drawn with exhaustion from continuous efforts to maintain stability. Elena approached with the Zephyrian matrix. "Their scientists claim this will neutralize the nanites. How do we deploy it?" "According to their specifications, it needs to be placed within the containment field, as close to the sphere as possible." Elena studied the failing field, calculations running through her mind. "The moment we open the field enough to insert the matrix, we risk the sphere fully activating." "It's a risk we have to take," Cao said quietly. "If that sphere activates outside containment, it's over, not just for this world but for any hope of ending this war without becoming what we've fought against." Elena nodded, decision made. "I'll do it personally." Despite protest from her officers, Elena prepared for the delicate operation. The containment field would be partially lowered, just enough to slip the matrix through, then immediately re-established. The window would be measured in seconds, with no margin for error. As final preparations were made, Elena found herself standing beside Emperor Zexthal, who had been brought to monitor the operation. "You risk your life to save my world," he observed. "After all we've done to yours." "I'm not doing this for you," Elena replied honestly. "I'm doing it because if we deploy that sphere, we become what we most despise. There has to be a line we won't cross, even in war, even for survival." Zexthal's multifaceted eyes studied her. Perhaps there is hope for coexistence after all. The moment came. As the containment field was temporarily modified to create an opening, Elena moved forward with the matrix. Time seemed to slow as she approached the suspended nanite sphere, its surface now writhing with microscopic activity as activation proceeded. With steady hands, she placed the Zephyrian matrix directly beneath the sphere and stepped back. "Re-establish containment, now." The field sealed itself, now enclosing both the nanite sphere and the countermeasure. For several heart-stopping moments, nothing happened. Then, gradually, the matrix began to pulse with increasing intensity, bathing the sphere in rippling waves of energy. "It's working," Dr. Cow reported, monitoring the readings. Nanite activity decreasing by 40%, 60%. The sphere's surface stilled as its components went dormant. The existential threat to Zapiria Prime neutralized by the combined efforts of the very species it had been designed to eradicate. In the aftermath, Elena secured the neutralized sphere and established a direct communication link with the Council. Her report was comprehensive, but unembellished. Admiral Jane had attempted to exceed his authority and deploy a weapon of mass destruction against explicit restrictions. Emperor Zexthal had offered conditional surrender and critical assistance in preventing planetary genocide. The Council deliberated for days, while a fragile ceasefire held across Zephyrian space. When their decision finally came, it reflected the complexity of the situation. Admiral Jane was relieved of command permanently, to face military tribunal for his actions. The human retribution fleet would withdraw to designated positions outside Zephyrian territory, while peace negotiations proceeded between diplomatic teams. Emperor Zexthal, true to his word, ordered all remaining Zephyrian military forces to stand down. As a gesture of good faith, he provided access to archives confirming his opposition to the original attack on Earth, evidence that the war had been initiated by a military faction against significant internal opposition. For Elena, the victory felt hollow as she prepared for her return to Earth. The human retribution fleet had achieved its strategic objective. The Zephyrian Empire could no longer threaten humanity. But the cost had been staggering. Thousands of human lives lost in the campaign, millions of Zephyrian civilians dead in the bombardment, and deep questions about what humanity had become in its quest for vengeance. Lieutenant Kim found her in the observation deck as the Vengeance prepared to depart Zephyrian space. "I've submitted my resignation, Commander," he said quietly. "Once we reach Earth, I'm requesting reassignment to the monastery outpost on Titan." Elena nodded, understanding. "You need time to reconcile what we've done." "I don't know if reconciliation is possible." Kim's gaze was distant. "At the nexus point, I coordinated strikes that killed thousands. I told myself it was necessary, that it was justice for Earth. Now I'm not sure what it was, except that we became what we swore we'd never be." "Destroyers of worlds," Elena murmured, recalling his words from what seemed a lifetime ago. "Precisely." Kim bowed slightly, a gesture of respect. "But you stopped us from crossing the final line. Whatever else this war has cost us, you preserved that much of our humanity." After Kim departed, Dr. Cow joined Elena at the viewport, watching as Zapiria Prime receded into the distance, still wounded by war but alive, its civilization intact. "I've finished analyzing the nanite sphere's programming," Cow said without preamble. "It was designed not just to kill, but to ensure maximum suffering before death. The line between self-defense and genocide is perilously thin. Commander. But Admiral Jane didn't just approach that line. He leapt across it. "And we nearly followed," Elena replied softly. "If you hadn't alerted the council." "I did what any scientist should. Questioned whether our methods served our stated purpose." Chow's expression was somber. "Victory means nothing if we sacrifice everything we value to achieve it." The journey back to Earth took 2 weeks, during which Elena prepared her formal testimony for the hearings that would inevitably follow. The war's conclusion had split public opinion. Many celebrated the unequivocal victory over those who had attacked Earth, while others questioned the methods employed to achieve it. When they finally reached Earth orbit, Elena looked down at her homeworld, still scarred but healing, dome cities gleaming in the sunlight. The planet had changed, and so had she. The idealistic peace envoy was gone forever, replaced by a woman who had led fleets into battle and made decisions that cost thousands of lives. Yet, some core of her former self remained, the part that had refused to cross the final line, that had recognized Emperor Zexthal's humanity, despite everything that had happened between their species. 6 months after their return, Elena stood in the newly expanded Garden of Fallen Nations in Berlin. The memorial had been modified to include a new section dedicated to those lost in the counteroffensive, both human military personnel and, controversially, civilian casualties from Zapiria Prime. As she placed a small token at the base of the memorial, a familiar voice spoke behind her. "A fitting tribute, wouldn't you say?" Elena turned to find the council chair approaching, her formal attire suggesting she had come directly from official proceedings. "It's a start," Elena replied, "acknowledging all the victims of the war, not just our own." "The peace talks progress slowly, but steadily," the chair informed her. "Emperor Zexthal has proven surprisingly cooperative. The Harmony Conclave has gained significant influence in their new governmental structure. And the War Council? Disbanded. Their leaders face tribunals similar to those Admiral Jane underwent." The chair studied Elena thoughtfully. "Which brings me to the purpose of my visit. The Council is establishing a new interspecies diplomatic corps. We need someone to lead it, someone who understands both the necessity of strength and the imperative of restraint." Elena raised an eyebrow. "After everything that's happened, you want me to return to diplomacy?" "Precisely because of everything that's happened." The chair's expression was earnest. "You've seen war at its worst. You understand its costs better than anyone. Who better to ensure we never travel that road again?" As Elena considered the offer, her hand drifted to the holographic pendant she still wore, the images of her family preserved within. What would they think of her now? The professor of ethics, the refugee worker. Would they recognize their daughter in the woman she had become? Perhaps not entirely, but they might recognize her final choice aboard the Vengeance, the decision to risk everything to prevent a genocide that would have forever stained humanity's conscience. "I'll need a team," Elena said finally, "including Dr. Cow, if she's willing." "Already arranged. She's eager to return to her original work, understanding alien species rather than developing weapons against them." They walked together through the memorial garden, discussing the framework for the new diplomatic initiative. As they passed a group of human peacekeepers on patrol, Elena overheard a young cadet questioning a veteran officer. "What happens if another species strikes us unprovoked?" the cadet asked. "Do we show restraint even then?" The veteran's response was measured but firm. "Then, they will learn one lesson. Earth never forgets. Earth never forgives. But neither do we surrender what makes us human in our pursuit of justice." Elena nodded slightly to herself. It was a start, a recognition that strength without wisdom was merely brutality, that survival without principles was merely existence. As she prepared to leave the garden, a notification chimed on her comm unit. Deep space sensor arrays had detected an unexplained transwarp signature beyond the galactic rim. neither human nor Zephyrian in origin. The universe, it seemed, had more challenges in store. Whether humanity would face them with the wisdom earned through bitter experience remained to be seen. But Elena was determined that whatever came next, they would not forget the lessons written in the ashes of two worlds, nearly destroyed by fear and vengeance. The lone human warship, now a vessel of peace rather than retribution, would drift through many star systems in the years to come. Its presence would serve as silent testimony, not just to humanity's resolve, but to its capacity for both justice and mercy, a complexity no alien species would ever again underestimate.